In today's video, we'll photograph fungi up close with an iPhone and then focus stack those images using Lightroom and Photoshop. Let's go! Landscape photography appears in different shapes and sizes if you're willing to seek out that which is easily overlooked. With overcast skies and a trailhead that wasn't quite green yet, I had to rethink how I'd see the landscape. I had to go deeper. Enter the micro world of fungi. This space is all new to me, and as I began to research the species I found, I discovered an entire mushroom community, from foraging to medicinal and everything in between. I was fascinated as I watched YouTube videos on fungi and just how passionate this community is. If you're knowledgeable in the world of fungi and just happen to stumble across this video, help out this community on my channel by leaving a comment if you recognize this species. In my limited research, I came up with Trichaptum biforme or Trametes versicolor, which I'm probably mispronouncing. But then there's different types like a violet-toothed polypore, turkey tail, a false turkey tail. Oh my! At this point, the rabbit hole began to go deeper, and I was more mesmerized by my subject, especially after learning that these types of fungi, often called shelf fungi, I believe, are a great decomposer of logs and stumps. I learned there are lots of nutrients in deadwood, and these fungi help recycle those nutrients back into the soil. So, really cool stuff here. Alright, back to photography. After discovering my subject, I used my iPhone to sample potential imagery that I might find interesting. There's that feeling you get when you know your creativity is being stimulated. From here, I might have reached for my Nikon Z6, but it wasn't with me. But my iPhone was, and I was getting inspired by what I framed on my screen. When composing with an iPhone at such close distances, a simple yet powerful trick is to rotate your phone so that your lenses are now at a lower perspective. Doesn't seem like much, but you'd be surprised how different your perspective is, and it may just be the angle you were looking for. At this close of a distance to my subject, it's difficult to get everything sharp from front to back, and I wanted the background soft, but there to also show the environment. So I planned on focus stacking these later in post. Now, I didn't have a tripod on me, so I had to shoot handheld. And because I would be merging several images for the focus stack, I had to consider leaving extra space in my frame, which would be cut off after aligning the images. So keep that in mind when composing your images. After settling on a composition, tap on your phone's screen to focus on your foreground subject, then make the image. Repeat this for the midground and the background if necessary. I made 3 images here for different focus points like this. Tap the focus on your subject in the foreground and make your image. Do the same for the midground, make your image, and finally, the background, take your image. We now have 3 images. Notice how I didn't focus on the background trees? That was intentional, and we'll discuss that later. This photo shoot made my day, as I wasn't planning on any good imagery. Okay, we're done in the field. It's time to jump into the studio and get creative. Let's go. Alright, we're in Lightroom Classic. Let's go ahead and focus stack some images. So, these are the sets of images that I had taken out at this shoot. In fact, this is the one right here that I used in the video earlier. I think we're going to choose this one right here though. So go ahead and right click and just expand this stack so I can see the images inside. Alright, so I have 3 images here. First thing I like to do is select them, and we are going to right click. We're going to go to Edit, and we're going to open as layers in Photoshop. So these will open up in Photoshop as 3 layers in the same file. We want to select them. Now earlier I mentioned to you that when you're composing, leave a little space, just maybe zoom out a tad bit so that you have a little room around your edges, and I'll show you why. Now I was shooting handheld, so you can see if we look at each one of these are, you know, it's not like being on a tripod where they're going to be very, very close. So the software is going to fix that. So the first thing we want to do from the edit menu is go to auto align layers. And under this scenario, I'm going to choose auto. In fact, 99% of the time I choose auto. These 2 I usually keep unchecked unless I have some vignette issues going on. So let's go ahead and align these images. And this is where you see the edges of the frame that I was speaking of. So we might have to crop this out. We'll have to see, but it's better to do this in the field so that you can crop out if you have to. Now in this next step, again, make sure all your images are still, your layers are still selected. In this next step, we go back to edit, but instead of aligning, now we want to auto blend. So auto blend may fix this, but again, if it doesn't, it's nice to have the option to just crop it out and still have the composition you were hoping for. So we don't want panorama, we want stack images, and we want to keep both of these selected right here. So this option right here, this content aware fill transparent, this is going to try and attempt to remove all of this. It's going to fill in these transparent areas, and it's probably going to try and fix this. It doesn't always work. You can see lines here, obviously down here. So let's see what it does. And as far as the seamless tones and colors, I never turn that off. In my past experience, if you turn this off, you start getting really weird masking. Like you'll see it's going to create masks when this is finished, and you may see some of the pockets of the masks from the 3 images. It just looks awful. So keep both of those on, hit OK, and let Photoshop do its magic and see how lucky we are going to get here. And wait for it. Hey, there it is. Alright, so I still have my marching ants. Command D or Control D will remove them. And now you can go ahead and take a look at your edges. Wow, I am pretty dang impressed. Usually you could still see little traces or something is just off a little. So much so that I'm almost convincing myself that there's something wrong with this, but in fact there really isn't. What I don't like is what it did with these tones right here and maybe this right here. You know, the idea earlier in the video I mentioned how I didn't focus a 4th image for this background. I intentionally kept it blurry, and the reason for that is this is the story right here. This is what we want to tell. But I also want to put it in its environment. I want the viewer to know that, hey, this was taken in a forest. Now, you can quickly look at this background. As blurry as it is, you can quickly make out that this is a forest. And so there's enough information here to still tell this story of the environment where these mushrooms are without distracting from the sharpness of the subject itself. But these might be a little distracting. Now, normally the eye goes to the brightest portions of a frame, of an image. But because there's so much high contrast in these, this could be an issue. So we may play with that when we get back over to Lightroom. But we're done. It's really that simple. We didn't have to make any changes. We are simply done. So we are going to just hit the X to close this out. We're going to get a little message here. Do you want to save? Of course we do. Now when we save this, it's going to save this as a TIFF. Now that should have took us back into Lightroom, but it didn't, so let's just go back ourselves. And what do you know? Here is our image right here. Alright, so the first thing I just want to do for our organization is just select these, right click, and just group them all into a stack, just for organization. And by the way, if you want to learn more about this, I did make a video, I think it was the panorama video. I'll leave a link up here where I get more in depth in organizing your images by stacking. All right, so let's open this up and do a little work on this. So what I want to try and do here quickly is go to the Develop tab by pressing D, and I'm going to try and just clean this up, and clean this up really quickly. So let's start up here, hitting our Q, brings up our heal and clone tool. I'm going to try the heal, and I'm just going to see what happens. Make this a little bit smaller, my brush size, and maybe just do something like this and see. Hey, not bad. Look at that. Okay, so what we can do here is if I hit the H key, I can see where it cloned from, where it took data from, and we can also see that these do look pretty similar. So the beautiful thing about using the H to hide your overlay is that you can hide all the samples you've made, and then you can actually go over them again. You can't do that if you have them shown. If the overlay is here, there's just no way I can do it. It's a hand tool. But if I hit H, now I can go back in, make my brush a little smaller. We just want to make this different than that. I'm just going to kind of come in here and do that, and now it looks different, and that is all we need for that. Let's move on. Brush a little bit bigger. Let's just try this. You know what? Hit your H key to see where it took information from. Bring it up. That's fine. Remember, this is all soft. This is not the the subject in mind, so you don't have to be really precise with this. Nobody's really going to notice, but you do want to get it the best you can. So hit your H. You can move this wherever you want it. You can do something like this. Of course, that's matching with that. So maybe something like that perhaps. And let's take our feather here and bring it down. Nope, I'm going to bring it up, unfortunately. H again, and let's just try this guy right here. Let's just... Alright, so what do we want to do with this? Quickly go into our basic tool. I want to add a little contrast to bring more out on these mushrooms, not much. I want to bring down some highlight overall. I want to bring in some texture to bring those up a little, the mushrooms. And I think maybe some dehaze, I'm not sure. Maybe a little. And then some detail. And let's see. It looks like we don't need much here. Okay, I'm thinking maybe something like that. Alright, that is not too bad, is it? Look at that. I think we have ourselves a nice image. Outside of that, have a great week. I hope you get out and try some of this stuff and get out there and shoot.